Lethal Company! You know what it is, even my grandma has played it.
I know you steel-wooled my ass.
Engine.
A while back I saw this video by Beanie called Creating a More Realistic Player Model for Lethal Company. And as a 3D artist, it really inspired me. It somewhat shifted my workflow with creating models. I'm making a FNAF fan game currently, and this single video nudged me to remake all the character models from scratch. And wow, that was a good decision. If you couldn't tell already, I really like this video. I've always had a thing for seeing how low poly models will look with an HD reimagining of some kind. That doesn't come from a place of, oh, these look so bad, higher poly means better for real. I love these games' aesthetics, when they have an actual reason to have said aesthetic, but whatever. I think where this really shines for me is Ultra Kill.
Gabriel's cake.
It's always really cool to see people more talented than me take on the character designs in a more realistic style. I've even tried dabbling in it. The results leave much to be desired, at least for me. Outside of Beanie's video, there have been some other people dipping their toes into realistic Lethal Company models. Shout out to the cool people. I said, well, I like the game, and I have all this free time on my hand. Why don't I try to do something too? The first step was to, obviously, pick something from the game's roster to model. I don't want to just do the player model again. It would be boring and it would be pointless, since Beanie's video is leagues above anything I could ever do. Same goes for the Bracken. And with the rest, I don't feel a strong connection towards any of the designs really. Not to say they are bad or anything, but they don't tickle that little artist in me. What the fuck did I just... None of them make me want to jump into Blender and start pulling an all-nighter to finish a model of them. Oh wait, I really like the coil heads. I'm gonna... Oh. Okay, I see how it is. How about... Rips? Before I fully start, here are a few things I feel like I should mention. If you're completely new to this concept, I suggest watching Beanie's video first, since he covers some technical terms I might use or reference here and you might not understand. Also, it's a really good video, so... Also, if you have watched Beanie's video and came to watch this, note that it's not going to be exactly following that video's structure beat to beat. It's going to be a different style. My style. And finally, I might repeat some points here and there. Thinking is hard, leave me alone. With that said, Nutcrackers. Despite their name, in the game they don't crack any nuts. 0 out of 10. Scott's error was better. They're one of the more rare enemies, having a higher chance to spawn in later days and tier 3 moons. They roam around and then stand still to scan the area, and only see you if you're moving. If they do, they take the appearance of an ordinary Nutcracker figure, but having an almost out-of-place eye inside their heads. That's the end of my notes for the design. By the way, this was legitimately going to be a video about the coil heads at first, but as I was writing the script for that one, Beanie beat me to it, and I saw no reason to make a video about the same character. So I decided Nutcrackers are a worthy contender. If Beanie somehow beats me to this again, I'm going to type eject into the terminal. Starting off, I imported a Nutcracker model from the game itself as the main reference, and some images from Google to maybe spice things up. Now, it's probably because I'm stupid, but I couldn't figure out what this outfit was called. It does look like palace guards, but I could swear there was a closer match I seen in other places. Nonetheless, I had all the info I wanted, and started the model. In 3D, you have two main methods of modeling something: sculpting and polymodeling. Sculpting is essentially like making a statue out of a rock. It literally is sculpting. There are programs like ZBrush that are specially made for this. I'll be honest, even though I use sculpting for some parts of my models, even this one, I have never actually used it to fully make a character model. My brain just doesn't understand. There's a Hey, editor bayg here. I'm kinda sick, but why is my line delivery so fucking bad? Like, Jesus Christ, was that a voice crack? Method that I use, polymodeling. In this method, it's more of a connected dots type of deal. These are called vertices. Say hi. When you connect two of them together, you get what's called an edge. Connect two edges or more and you get a face. For modeling something that's meant to be used in the animation program itself, it's best to use faces that are made up of 4 vertices or quads, since it's much easier to work with and alter. If you see these, that's bad. With that being said, the god-awful method I have came up for my workflow is to literally spawn a single vertice and outline the shape I want from the side and front, or any features that pop out in the design, like a smile or eyes. Now, on the real-life Nutcrackers, at least from the references I saw, and the model itself, their teeth was painted on. This was the point where I was left with 2 options. 1. I could make the Nutcracker accurate to its real-life counterparts, making it just a scaled-up version of an ordinary Nutcracker. This would mean its teeth, cheeks, eyes, and so on would be painted on. Its joints would have been segmented, even though none of the refs or the actual model have that. I still think it would make sense. And the only thing that would be standing out would be the eye hidden inside its head. Or, option 2. It could be a more detailed version of the Nutcracker, meaning its features would be actually modeled. This would make it appear like an actually bigger version of a Nutcracker. Think of it how a real car is to a toy car. It would also imply that it was manufactured for a greater purpose, as seems to be the theme with the more industrial creatures of this game. I chose option 2 since I think it made more sense and made the model more interesting. I made the teeth have more realistic looking gums since I think that had an implication of the eye being an invasive part of the model. Or again, it was manufactured like this. Who knows? Then came time for UV mapping. The worst part of any modeling Assuming you have watched Vini's video, I won't be repeating what UV mapping is. So to put it briefly, UV mapping is data that tells a mesh/object how to project an image, or in this case a texture, onto itself. Here's an example, that's your crash course. The reason the UV mapping process is stinky is because you have to start cutting the model in a way that makes the projection flat enough so the texture doesn't wrap weirdly, but also making sure that parts are big enough so the image being projected is not pixelated, while also making sure that the UVs don't overlap and have enough space from each other. There is an add-on that, to put it lightly, tries to place the UV chunks you have already unwrapped in the best way possible, but it's on the same level as if I tried to manage a rocket launch, so I'm stuck doing everything by hand. That's great. It's also a good idea to use a checkmark texture to see if your final texture is going to be pixelated or not. The less it's seen, the less UV space it should take. It's also a good idea to copy UV maps on meshes that are duplicated if you don't have space to spare. After that, we move on to ID mapping, which again isn't fun but not as time consuming or nearly as complex as UV mapping. ID mapping basically gives the mesh data on what color vertices should be. This is then used by something like Substance Painter to help with masking different layers and such. It's a nice way to keep things compact and in one single material, and a must for game development since it helps a lot with performance. Then came time to do this. If your model, like this one, is made up of separate pieces that are also going to be moving and might be just a little too close to each other, you need to make a mesh that's the model, but the parts are separated from each other. Because when you're baking, there will be unwanted artifacts that are caused by the meshes being too close to each other. And then I made a duplicate of that mesh that will have more detail on it, aka the sculpting part, if you will. Now, considering the arms and legs are implied to be made of cloth, you'd think I would have a very good knowledge of how clothing creases look and how to replicate that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Then came the substance part. Then I forgot to bake the textures and proceeded to paint for 10 minutes before realizing my goop. And then when I did break the textures, this happened. Please never pick 3D as your field. Other than that, the texture painting went fine. Now let's talk about ambient occlusion. Very fun topic, I promise. Ambient occlusion, to put it simply, is when the material simulates smaller and soft shadows. In the real world, when two objects are touching, there is a little bit of shadow created between them. Ambient occlusion basically recreates that effect and makes everything look less flat. Now in Blender, there is a note for this, but it's good to also have it on your texture, because ambient occlusion, aside from making the materials look realistic, makes the color pop out a bit and gives them a more weighted look. Think of it like an outline for a 2D character. When in the process of baking, there is a function for automatically creating an ambient occlusion map for you, but I don't trust it. Also, if a part of your model moves, you'll have this weird dark spot moving with it. So even though I used ambient occlusion in the baking process, I still proceeded to paint on areas which I thought needed the dark spots by hand. Now came time for rigging! Yeah! Rigging, to put it simply, is when you tell one thing to move by something else. The two main types of rigging is just parenting the object to, for our purposes, a bone in an armature. Or weight painting. Firstly, you put an armature modifier onto the mesh, then paint weight onto the vertices that you want a bone to affect. Now, with a model like this, where some parts are meant to be deformed and some parts are solid objects, you would think a mix of two would work, right? Well, yes. But I prefer to use weight paint for all of them. Meaning, if a part of the model is meant to be solid, I still weight paint it to be affected. Basically, like how it would be if it was just parented. Now, you may be asking, why? This is a method that I'm pretty sure game developers use to have less objects for a single model to have to deal with. I just think it's a good way of keeping everything compact and organized and in a single mesh. Plus, in some scenarios, re-rigging it would be much easier. And that's the base model. Now time for this one, I didn't follow any real life references, mostly because I was lazy. Though in hindsight, you could say the shotgun isn't accurate to anything from real life because it was just specially made for the Nutcracker for some reason. Now, one big thing I changed about the shotgun was its handle.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
With the OG model, the shotgun just clips into the Nutcracker's hand. Here, I made it so it's sort of like a Lego situation, where the handle is molded to fit the Nutcracker's whole hands. That is a word it's a bit strange looking at a first glance, but I think the end result turned out good. Then came UV mapping the shotgun and texturing it. Also added this random detail where there's an eye on the golden part. I just wanted to fill it up. I had no reason. I also noticed that there is usually text on real life shotgun shells, but I didn't know what they said or meant. So
I'll go up, you go right here. You don't have walkies. Shouldn't we stick together? I'm willing to risk it if we can cover more ground. Turn that off. What are you doing here? I thought you were upstairs, doors are locked. We need to find the key. Turn that off. Oh, now you want to team up. Only cost us your precious fucking time. What is this? Are you really picking a fight right now? Every time I suggest something, you just go ahead with your own plan. And look where it's gotten us. You saved yourself a losing plan here. At this point, it doesn't even matter. You're just gonna make up some shitty plan, and that's it if we get to level. Well, maybe I'm scared I won't reach the quota, and maybe I have to think on my feet, and maybe I have this whiny, annoying bitch to deal with. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you remind me who it was that saved your ass on Vow? Turn that thing off!
To keep with tradition, I'm gonna be releasing the Nutcracker model with this video. And as a bonus, I'm gonna throw in my coil head model in there as well. Firstly because I'm pretty proud of how the end result turned out and I don't want it to go to waste. But also I somewhat promised the GleechZ official on Instagram.com I would release them. If you make anything with these and post them somewhere, make sure to tag me in the post. I like seeing what people make with my stuff. Anyway, make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell icon.